Well, the kill. So the theme we've had this whole time, we've had it's time to go hunting. That's come up a bunch. And we've got it's not paranoia if someone's really after you.
Yeah.
That line is used and recycled a bunch of times.
Yep. That's Jonathan's line apparently, but he tells
Yep.
it to Katie. Katie repeats it. Yeah, it's not paranoia if they're actually hunting you.
Yep. And Rafe says it at the very end here
Yeah.
in the surf after he's taken out. So we're getting to the kill. It's time to hunt. I feel like this is where the book really gets back to the theme. And Jack's talked about a bunch how he writes on that sticky note what the theme is to carry through the book. And these last few chapters, this last 200 pages, whatever, 150 pages, we are really getting into the dark side of man explored through the dynamic of the hunter and the hunted. I think you cannot put a better one-line slogan on everything that's about to happen besides the dark side of man explored through the dynamic of the hunter and hunted. Yeah. It's a perfect lens in which to read this here, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So at this point, they basically can't officially go, but, of course, being that this is a Jack Carr novel, he's going to get some sort of band back together. And I really like the descriptions of everyone. It does take a little bit of time. I'm sure some more casual readers didn't really care for the lineup of guys, but
Farkas,
which I like all those descriptions. I think it's I want to say Diaz maybe is described as the guy who makes half-face blades, which in real life is Andrew Arabito, and he makes him a Hunter Skinner, which is a real knife model that Andrew Arabito makes. He's a former SEAL, friends with Jack Carr, so it's like
cool.
he made the details and descriptions of these people his real buddies, just with different names.
Right.
And so it's cool. It's like if Jack is writing James as himself, it's like he's going on this op for revenge with his buddies, which is kind of cool. But it also gives shout outs to people who are doing different things outside the military now. So if you're really into it, there's other things to explore there as well.
And I really like how, just like that, bringing the cast of characters together, almost everybody Reece encounters, because he's kind of just that CIA spook in a lot of these meetings, who is on the special activities, end of things. But what's really cool is everyone's like, I know who you are, thank you for what you've done, and all this. And it's that one character, I think you're right, Diaz or whoever, who's in the unit, that Ranger unit that was training for the op initially, who you really like, who actually lets him, requisition the equipment,
weapon,
or 1049, whatever the form was, he takes him for the CIA. I feel like just those little interactions of people coming up to Reece. I think they're eating a meal when he's first on site, and just what people say to him, is really cool. And I think that's where Jack is channeling what he went through and the closeness that he knew with his guys and other people in other units. And you really get the sense this is how operators talk to one another.
Yeah. Chris said earlier, this world feels so lived in. And that's what kind of makes it believable. And it's almost like, as much as he name drops Brad Thor novels in every single book, it's almost like someone's reading a Brad Thor novel. That's just like an airport novel, thriller book. This is reality. And it kind of, even though it's like a name drop to a now friend of his, it's at the same time, I don't know. It's like watching something that's maybe a little bit more believable at the same time, because someone has something that's fiction over there that we know is fiction.
Right.
One other angle as we're fleshing out new characters, and while I don't want to say the loser of the book for me, something I think that takes it down a peg is that you're almost at the 2/3, 3/4 mark, squeezing too much in. He's doing that with is the Reginald Pine story. We hear a little bit about President Grimes, who was VP. His chief of staff is this jackass who wants to be the gatekeeper. He's this lobbyist, basically destroyed people's lives with the vaping and tobacco industries, used that to his advantage, pretending he's president, making it seem like he could greenlight the op or not by what he's going to pass on and allow access to the president. And so it was very Flynnian. We got a huge backstory on Reginald Pine. And it was very Vince Flynn. He's like a Stu Garrett. You want to hate him, but I have enough people to hate at this point. And while I love the political angle in my books, and he could have been an awesome character, I don't know if this is the right time to throw him in, especially throw him in with that level of depth.
Yeah, and I think if you compare it to when we got another new character in terms of the senator, right? Senator Rafe's father-in-law, we get the same sort of backstory with him, but I'm not minded by that, or I'm not bothered, but like it actually adds to the story because then we're with him in a couple of scenes. He becomes an important, like James uses his airplane and he helps him
his cabin.
He helps him use his cabin. He helps him in the fight. Right, they're taking guns with Jonathan, and Whereas here, when I'm listening to that chapter, I thought my Audible had like skipped, or my scribe had skipped. I thought I had missed a couple chapters because it was just such a stark change to. All right, we're now because then I looked and I was like, oh, there's only like 2.5 hours left, right, or 2 hours left. It's like we're getting this new character, and it's pretty in depth. And is he supposed to be this major player? He's an asshole. That whole like vaping thing, like was just insane backstory. Like, just I think it was just too much. I think if you just had to, I think if you just toned it down a little bit and not just made him, all right, this is this guy, and he's gonna say no. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't have.
It's just out of place.
My bigger problem.
It is out of place, but I think the wrong that is made with this dickhead is righted in the Devil's Hand with the bad guy cast in that book. So I agree, this guy is out of place. As far as back to Thorn, which I don't like his name because it's so familiar with Horn from the first novel.
Oh, right.
I think Thorn, I like his background and how much it's discussed because he has a conversation with Reece that's very important where he explains that he lost his wife and hasn't been in the house since. And the gist of the talk is they took your past from you. Don't let them take your future. Right. So I think that is the main purpose of that character in general. Like,
and that conversation is important.
Yes.
Like it adds to the story.
Yes. So I don't mind that I learn about that guy's background at all.
Yeah, this guy, he ultimately, right in the end, we find out that he was being like used, right, as a Russian mole.
Yes, correct.
And
it was a little weak.
And at the end, that guy,
I feel like that setup should have happened earlier.
Yeah, that LaRue character.
Or if you had introduced him earlier and he had been, LaRue had been talking to Gray, and
right.
There had been this connection between the three different stories.
That's how Flynn would have done it.
Sure, but here it was really weird. I'm glad you picked up on that, Mike.
Why is he just going to go sell these secrets and tell them and spill the beans to some random dude? It was just forced because you needed it to leak out somehow.
I agree, and this is maybe one of my beefs with how Jack does things, but I kind of like it at the same time. It's like, I talked to you guys before about how he puts out those little 2-minute trailers for the books that are filmed professionally and stuff. So I have a description up on his website of the book. Now there's 2 little paragraphs in here that say, with an unknown entity inside the U.S. government compromised by Russian intelligence, Reece is forced to recruit a team of former commandos to bring his unique brand of vengeance to the Russian mafia on their home turf, turning the hunters into the hunted. So if you don't read that, you aren't expecting this dipshit that you now get dumped about a full chapter and a half of his background on.
Right.
So while I love these descriptions, and I'm sure like the one in the back of the book is the same or similar, I feel like that information needs to be earlier. That there is a mole in the U.S. government and we don't know who it is.
I feel like sometimes maybe those back of the cover things or the blurbs, because I felt like this with the latest Kyle Mills book. Legion is the one of the main antagonists in that story, and Legion is in the blurb, but Legion doesn't come into the series, to the actual story, until what, 2/3 into the novel, Mike?
Right, and doesn't really do much.
Doesn't really do much, and we actually had recorded that episode, that book in 2 separate chunks, and purposely didn't read what we weren't talking about. And as I then read the description, Mike's like, "Wait, we didn't even get to talk about Legion. We haven't even read about Legion yet." So I'm wondering if maybe there was something else. Maybe this book was longer. How long was this book, Mike or Tyler? Do you know?
I don't off the top of my
head.
Page
wise?
It seems longer than the last 2.
I think it might be the longest of the series, actually.
Devil's
So it doesn't
Hand
feel
seemed
like
kind of long too.
doesn't feel like Jack is under this pressure that Kyle and Brad seem to be placed under by the publishers. I mean, or maybe I'm just like putting that on them, but I feel like they are being forced to cut their books down, make them a little bit more quippy, a little more quick reads, whereas Jack doesn't give a shit.
This is 432 pages.
432?
Yeah. And I do believe that it's the longest of the series.
It's the longest. It didn't feel that way, except parts like this almost made it feel that way at times. But overall,
because the pacing is so good through the rest of it.
Right. So when something like this storyline takes you out for a little bit, you're kind of like, wait, what? The valley scene was awesome. And we're about to get to the hunting scenes, which are awesome. And this, I just don't know why the Reginald Pine backstory was so long. But Chris, one other thing you made me think of is sometimes those descriptions are written so early because the marketing teams and the publishers need something. They need that hook. They need the synopsis. And I know Kyle has talked about this and others. It's like Legion led all of the marketing. It was all about this Legion villain that's out there. But then when the book got written, it wasn't front and center. So I don't know if it's like pacing and editing versus you need to write a synopsis and the marketing pitch early, and your final product might deviate a little bit. And so maybe that was stuff that got cut, or this whole there's a mole in the government. He's like, I'm going to push that off to the Devil's Hand kind of stuff later on, not necessarily going to lean into it too heavy in Savage Son because the other stuff is gold.
Right. But now we're going to get into my favorite part of the book.
Your favorite, okay. Take us to Siberia. Well, I guess Kamchatka and Medny Island wouldn't technically be Siberia. It's a little further east and south, but
I meant to look this up. Where actually is Medny Island? Is it a real place?
I was surprised. Medny Island is one of the closest Russian territories to the U.S. with the Aleutian Islands. Attu Island is one of the Alaskan islands at the end of the Aleutian chain. And Medny Island is not that far off. So it's technically one of the most remote Russian islands and one of the closest to the U.S.
Yeah, I'm looking at a map of it right now.
Oh, okay.
I like that. I like that it's not fictional.
No. And they even talk about going to Attu. I think that's where, if they needed to get somebody to the hospital, like Rafe, which they needed to do, their plan was to stop there.
Yeah.
Because that would be the closest medical facilities on U.S. territory. And it's not far off.
Yeah, so by this point, the commandos are all prepped up and ready to go, and we're on Thorne's plane with Liz making hilarious in-flight comments, which this book does have a decent amount of comedy in it. Like I find myself chuckling a couple times, and I think that's something that each of these books really needs. While even if it's like I don't know, I feel like there's even a couple points in like especially Terminal List where like there's comedy, but it probably shouldn't be funny. It's just the situation and the reaction of the characters is like Reece is such a smart ass, and people are obviously dying horribly, but it made me laugh. But this one does have some comedy in it. So they're getting ready to jump out of a private plane, basically. So
yeah, and they're going to do the hey-ho jump. And I kind of enjoyed the storyline of the landing kind of going wrong and having to adapt on the op because of the EMP. Basically, Reginald Pine tipping off LaRue let the Russians know they're going to have a team inbound, and so they were prepared to take out their equipment, which would lose their advantage. You got NVGs, they've got all the altimeters and different equipment for their jump, different communication comms, and so everything basically goes down, and we get a pretty hard landing in the snow, and you got to fight in the nighttime, which allows, and this is a cool scene with the flares. And I love how Reece thinks back to Vietnam and his father. We turn the night into day. We send up these flares one by one. Reece goes up on a perch, gets the drop on the guys, and basically this advance team sent to kill them, they're able to turn things around and get the upper hand. And so now it can be Reece going after, what's his name? Alexander, all on his own.
Chris, is there anything here you really enjoyed for the jump and landing and first assault?
Well, I think like just the fact that they're going to try to perform a hey-ho jump out of a G-class, like, private jet is pretty insane. It's like some Mission Impossible shit with the dog.
With the dog, Ito.
Yes.
Yeah, I like the, again, this community of the good guys are going to get a pretty high score on my scorecard. Just the group he's able to assemble, and when they're going through the training, and the people in the special ops community, and how they're going to help him out, and how Jonathan offers to pay all the guys like a $250,000, and the one guy turns it down and says, "Put it in Freddie Strain's kids fund or whatever." All those little details really like elevate the story, and there's things that like we've said that get placed in that have no meaning, but I think there's some things here that make it better and elevate it. And I think once I like how the EMP is sort of juxtaposing this idea of Rafe in the beginning. He's like you guys mentioned, he's the opposite of Jack. He's sort of this old school guy, and so by taking away and going back to basics, that you really see how adaptive James can be, and how you believe now that story that he was able to. I think you even believe it more once he is able to track 6 months through Siberia. But you believe that story of him, like carrying a kayak through Alaska. And I love, he's done this in a couple of the novels so far, where he talks to himself. He's like, think, act, like make a decision. Like, I like when Jack puts those things into James's head, and we're beginning to see this relationship and his remembrance to his father that's going to be like play a major role, especially in the Blood. And I liked all those callbacks, especially like towards the end here. And I don't know, we're going to get to this part, but the fucking, what did you guys think of Alexander as a bad guy? We've already had him. We've met him a couple different times. We've had a couple, like we've obviously had his backstory all the way back to when he was a kid watching his mom off herself.
Yeah.
And then that moose.
Yeah. The moose scene.
Wanted to watch the moose suffer, and his dad thought
he got
kid's fucking
mad
crazy.
when his dad killed the moose. The scene of his training in the SVR, like that was fun. That was really weird. I don't know, what did you guys think of him? How does he stack up as a big bad?
I think his mentality and everything, I think he's very intimidating on what he's capable of, and he views himself very highly. Mm-hmm. But I really think he's flushed out to be exactly what he really is in the end, right before his death, which is a killer and a coward. And I mean, when it comes to this, you notice that Reece uses a compound bow, Rafe uses a traditional bow. What does Alexander use? He uses a crossbow. He uses he may quote hunt, but what he's doing compared to how Rafe and James know how to track is he's a novice.
He's a shortcut.
He's a wannabe. What it comes down to is like the best one word description for Alexander is that he is a wannabe. Yeah. And I think he really gets shown up, and while he's holding all the cards, it's like somebody walked in and took his whole hand out of his hand, like all the cards out of his hand. And
I totally forgot about his backstory.
Yeah.
That definitely adds to him as a character.
Yeah.
I forgot about his training and that girl he strangled and choked and went too far. Yeah.
And one thing we did skip over I wanted to comment on was like Oliver Gray and that secretary, and how she worked for Alexander and kind of got the ambush in place a little bit. And then I really enjoyed, I thought it was very espionage and spy like how Oliver was at the window and you could see his silhouette, and I think he lit a pipe and you could see like his face in the reflection, and she's out there and she gets stabbed.
Yep. And he got off on it or wet himself over it.
Yeah, basically. I thought, I don't know why that scene, just the way it's written, felt very like
noir. It was almost noir.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely got those vibes. Like I would view that in like black and white. And
I'll agree with you. Yeah, that one really stands out. And again, it's Jack doing this different genre or bringing in these different influences. That's almost very like Le Carré.
Or like Saboteur.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which we don't see a lot
No,
in the rest of this
I don't
series.
know. I don't know why that stood out to me, and I forgot to bring it up earlier. But anyways, let's get back to Medney. So the EMP is something I'm not a huge fan of, but it does force us to where we want to be, which is out of kind of your element, and you have to adapt, and you don't have the technology that you usually rely on because you're so used to James saying you take every tactical and technical advantage in every situation. You don't like square up evenly. You take as much of an advantage as you can get.
He doesn't have that here.
Exactly.
The team is kind of straight up screwed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's at the point he's got to fight off a dog with a snowshoe. Like,
yeah. So,
well, he's already coming in. Like, what he said, normally he would have had 40 guys, and they
QRF team.
A quick reaction forward team.
Gunship.
He's going in with 5 guys and a dog.
And flares.
In flares. Like, and each of them has 2 flares. That's it. So
yeah, I love the problem solving in this part.
Yes.
I'm trying to recall they use the flare and do that system, and I think Farkas gets injured.
Right.
Yep.
And then they make it,
fragged.
and then they end up making it to the area where people are held, right? In the jail cells and stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
Right. Then they go through the house. Exactly.
Yes.
Goes through the house. He finds Hannah's head, in formaldehyde in that jar.
Yeah. Which is obviously super rough. There's 2 moments in this book that they don't feel out of place, but they feel like Hollywood moments, and they're just sentences, just a couple sentences. And one of them is that he convinces the group that he needs to go finish this alone, which seems corny at first, but then the following couple sentences is him justifying it, which is 2 guys have to carry Farkas, 1 holds security. I'm like, okay, I'm in. You just sold me on this idea that just a second ago I wasn't on board with.
If you just left it with like, I got to do this alone, and he walks away, you're like, that's a bunch of bullshit.
The justification of it makes me 100% like even more okay with it.
I agree. Right. Definitely agree. And they can't miss the extract. And if they try to go do the mission, then pull Farkas out, you're going to miss it. You're stuck in Siberia.
100%.
And the Russians are going to be bearing down on you.
So from that point, I think it really focuses more on Alexander versus Rafe. And I can't recall who Alexander's native buddy is.
Sergey. Yes, that big Kodiak dude.
Yeah, which
the fight monster of a man.
The fight between him and James might be my favorite one-on-one fight in the series.
I think I agree. He's looking at different like fighting styles. He recognizes like Sambo at one point and then something else. He's doing this move.
For me, the best part is he saw him. Sergey lets James get his snowshoe off, and he's approaching him, and he said he caught a spinning back kick from him, and he goes, a spinning back kick from a man that size with that much force, I am in trouble. And I feel like that line is like the setup for like he's outmatched. He needs to figure something out, and luckily he has the old faithful Winkler on him that ends up giving him the upper hand.
Dude, he does some work with that Winkler there.
Yeah,
I mean.
Whenever we talk about the dark side of man, it's not only Alexander, but it's also Reece getting absolutely savage. And when we talk about ancient weapons, it just turns him into exactly that, just a savage.
He runs the crux of the Winkler like down the guy's arm to disarm him.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's so many Winkler moments. That's one of the more subtle ones with James Reece. It's not like the imam like crack him down the head or whatever.
Yeah.
This is a much more subtle one that's embedded in a bigger fight, and it is just awesome. It's one of those things, I heard this at one of the thriller conferences. You write your slow scenes fast and your fast scenes slow. I am so glad that fight took a couple of pages because it's probably a really quick fight in an actual timeline.
Yeah.
But Jack chose to deliberately take you through the mind of a warrior and how time slows and how you are really being intentional about how you're going to win the fight. And he does that a bunch of times when they're doing the flare thing. It's so rushed. They're getting shot out. How do they get out of this? Even Rafe pinned down in the valley. Yet Jack is able to slow those scenes down and take us through every sense that an operator has. Every sense, every decision they're making, and how they're going to communicate it to the team. And I just love the writing of Jack doing either a hand-to-hand fight scene or a full-on ambush scene is just way different than any other person with either limited or no military experience trying to do it. I'm not saying one's better, worse, one's a better author, but it's just so different. and you could tell it's another level here.
Yeah, 100%. I like that fight scene. That's probably my favorite part about this whole third act of the kill. I was really hoping. So at this point, what I was hoping for was Rafe and Alexander to get separated, and James to be Alexander's focus for a little bit, and then the hunt really be on. And I was hoping for like a viewpoint where Alexander thinks he knows what he's doing, and then like a master shows him what's really up. And while I don't know, sometimes I make my expectations too strong, it ends up being pretty well done still. I just being in this moment and knowing this is based off of The Most Dangerous Game, I thought that there would be a little bit more of a one-on-one thing, but at the same time, I feel like that would feel too Hollywood as well. So I'm happy they didn't go that route.
And I was nervous. I was similarly nervous about The Most Dangerous Game, that somebody was just going to show up in a bedroom and be hiding behind the curtains or whatever, and pop out and get Alexander in the middle of the night. I was like, it really worked in The Most Dangerous Game. It was freaking brilliant.
He even says that Alexander is thinking, is he going to go back to my room and wait for me to go asleep? Like I love that line. That. Yeah.
Love that line. Yeah. That line got me because I was like, oh, that was it. That's what happened.
Such a callback.
And it told me that he's not going to do that. That Jack's not just going to have that happen and take the easy way out.
Yes.
Brilliant.
So at this point, we don't realize it, but what James has done, I believe, is picked up Sergei's bow that he was training with earlier in the book. And this really turns into a focus of Alexander versus Rafe. Rafe gets very injured very fast, but he does put up a fight. It's not the same as Hannah. While you think he's going to do the same thing as Hannah, it drastically takes a left turn when he throws a rock, a football-sized rock, I think.
Yeah, and there's another Most Dangerous Game reference with Rafe backtracking and covering his tracks, making him go one way, where he's really going to backtrack through them and then cover his tracks going somewhere else. And then how Alexander is thinking, well, like every trained warrior, he's just going to go to the high ground, take the highest ground. I'll know what he's going to do. This is predictable. But then Alexander goes, wait, or does he know that I'm going to know that he would do that? And there's a lot of meta back and forth going on here. And I think it really adds to the suspense.
I agree. It does add to the suspense. Chris, what do you think of this Rafe Alexander showdown?
The hunt.
I liked it. I wanted a little bit more, like, I could have, I mean, I'm always wanting more. I could have done a little bit more, like, focusing on Rafe and then also, like, the whole, because all of this is happening. Like, I thought it was kind of crazy how Alexander and Rafe are on this hunt. And he's sort of just left his goodies. He knows that James is coming, right?
To take care of
And
Reece.
he's like, he's so arrogant. I mean, I guess that plays into, like you said, he's a poser. He's inexperienced. He's like, oh, forget about this guy who had this terminal list and killed all these people. Like, my goons are going to get him. I'm going to go on this hunt. I wanted to focus more of my time on the hunt. And like I said, it would have been cool to get more of like this trifecta of Reece, Rafe, and Jonathan. But I will say, like, the end where it sort of all culminates, I thought it was perfect. So in the end, we got there, and I was happy with how it concluded. But I could always do with more.
A
little more. I think
riff.
Like you could have gotten rid of that chapter with Reginald Pine and put in another chapter of like
More
back
Rafe.
and forth, hunting, and you would have got a couple more points out of me.
Yeah.
Hashtag more Rafe. Yeah.
I think the complaint that I just had about James versus Alexander being like a thing and like the hunt is really on, I think that I basically wanted to see James's skills, which in a way is corrected in the epilogue.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
That to me is the actual hunt. What Alexander is doing, he's not a hunt. Like Rafe says, he's not a hunter. He's just a killer. The real hunt is James and Oliver. That's the hunt.
Right.
Yeah, we already kind of talked about the epilogue, but I said it was one of my favorite parts. I wanted to see that entire. While I appreciate and like I totally agree. I did think about how poetic and short story-esque that epilogue is, I could have read an entire book that was that 6 months,
Do you mind one more long quote just because it's that good?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's that good, and I can't even do it justice. If only we can use Ray Porter's voice here. But
Yeah.
We don't want to get sued for all the pennies that we make off advertising. So, quote, as winter settled upon the harsh land, a rumor began to swirl among the villages of the Krasnoyorsk Krai. A ghost was moving across the tundra, sometimes taking the shape of the animals that inhabited the wilderness. Some of the stories described him as half man, half beast. Still others were sure one of the brown bears that inhabited the interior had killed a nomadic hunter, merging their souls. The stories were passed along in the way they had since the first peoples had moved into this land, following the herds that gave them sustenance. The ghost would occasionally steal food and supplies from the villages along his path, always a gift left in exchange. No one knew his destination, but it was rumored he was heading west. Toward what or whom was unknown. Mothers maintained an attentive eye on their children, keeping them closer than usual. Fathers and hunters took an extra minute to pause and study the landscape before closing their doors at night. Once, a village heard a gunshot in the distance. Even specters had to eat. Boom! That last line, it's haunting. It's just
Even
absolutely
specters
haunting.
have to eat.
Yeah, love that. So there's one other thing, though, before we jump into the epilogue. What'd you think about the team popping up and essentially saving him? I thought it was pretty cool that Vic was able to work his magic. I forget if they say he got through to the president or whatnot, but somehow that SEAL team was authorized to come in and extract the crew, and they kind of just pop up out of nowhere. It was almost like
I
the Eagles, the Lord of the Rings Eagles coming in, just swooping up Frodo and Sam.
They literally are. I like that they talk about being an SDV team, which is SEAL Delivery Vehicle, which is a very small submarine that carries a couple of guys, and it's a wet sub. So as far as I know, you have to have scuba gear inside, and it's actually water inside and out, but you like ride in it. So those are real things, and they wouldn't like come up on radar and stuff from Medney Island. I don't think they would arrive because they are so small. So I thought that was pretty cool. I like how they just kind of come out of nowhere. Jonathan and his rage showing up out of nowhere is pretty great. And I like how he hisses "fuck you" to them whenever they ask for names, even though it's clearly an American. So my second Hollywood moment is coming up, which is Reece turning around and going to Siberia alone.
Oh yeah, that's total Hollywood right there. Yeah, total Hollywood.
Which, it's funny. Like every time I think of something that bothers me, there's something that makes it okay. And like the thing that I like wouldn't happen if it weren't for that Hollywood-ish feeling moment, unfortunately. But
you have to have a few of them.
Yeah,
you can sprinkle a few in,
which
I can't lean on it too heavily.
I think there's 2, so that's perfect. And
that's
like
a good balance. Yeah,
the justification of the one for Farkas is awesome.
Yeah, I love. There's another line there from Jonathan which I really liked, where he was like, "I was not going to let the boys. I'm already going home, one child short. I wasn't going to go home with a second one. I would have no life after that if I left Rafe out here, and I knew I didn't give everything, including myself, to go get him.
Yeah.
But I knew all the other lads, they can go home to their families.
Yeah.
I'm not going home to a complete family anymore. I might go home to almost no family, half a family.
Yeah.
Yet they can go home. So I'm sending them home and I'm going in. I like that little line too.
Yeah. I like Jonathan really gets fleshed out as like probably the most badass sub character in the series through his actions in this one.
Nope. Caroline Hastings. Caroline and Jonathan. How about that? They're a couple. We'll put them together.
That's fine.
The Hastings in general, man.
Yeah. Just that name.
There's been talk and lots of questions about books just on the Hastings in the future. So that's a possibility.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, at this point, we didn't even talk about the kill, which is Reece killing Alexander with Sergei's bow. Right. I love the description of how he's getting ready to kill Rafe, and he says he willed his hand to pull the trigger and it just wouldn't, and he looked down and saw a broadhead sticking out of the left of his chest.
Yep.
And he just thought that it looked familiar and nothing really clicked. And then a second one came through his chest and then he fell. And like, I don't know why I like the description, how it didn't quite hit Alexander that this was a possibility that he would lose.
That goes to Chris's point that he kind of had his defenses down thinking, all right, my guys are going to take care of Reece and the insertion team and I'm free to hunt. I don't have a care in the world. And that was his hubris, his downfall.
Yeah. Right. And even recovering Rafe is stressful, where he goes in there, finds a body, and it's Alexander, and he's like, get the hell away from me. And he pushes him back in the water.
And keeps swimming,
Yeah, keeps finding Rafe. So at that point, after that, that team shows up we talked about already. So if you guys want to, we can talk about the epilogue again.
Let's do it. Yeah, a lot going on in the epilogue. And we also have the shipping container, too. So we talked about Reece going through Siberia. Anything more there? Or can we get into the real personal here? With Reece getting back home.
I mean, Chris, you got anything other than I like how he negotiates how to get back to the States?
Yeah, no, I think it's the whole scene with, the father or the what's the Russian
Ivan Zarkov.
I know, but what do they call Pagan? Pahan?
Yeah. I think it's
they
just
call
like
him
father. Yeah, or leader or something.
So that whole scene, like I said before, I thought he was going to let, Gray live, and I was going to be pissed, but he didn't. So it came through, and I see that. All right, he really didn't have that much beef with Ivan in terms of, I guess, like, Telly, you were kind of saying that he might have been the mastermind behind the Ukraine plot.
Just mainly behind the Oliver Gray stuff,
right?
In True Believer,
but I can see how Reece is becoming this CIA spook type thing. Finding an asset where he can potentially use in the future. I mean, he blatantly says, "I'm not going to like spy for you," but we could work out a deal. If you need something, I need something type, and it's good to have those kind of relationships going forward. And I like how the rest of this prologue, we get set up for the next couple books, and we're gonna really flesh that out in the blood, right? With his father and what we find, this lock, this safety deposit key. He gets the watch, he gets the car.
I love the Grand Wagoneer.
He gets a shot, an Ithaca shotgun.
Yes.
So I think it does what all good epilogues do in terms of like giving us some finality, some ending to the story, while also giving us enough intrigue, keep us waiting for the next year or so whenever the next book comes out. Right?
Yeah, this really isn't an in the blood level of a cliffhanger, but at the same time, I got to know what the safety deposit box key is for,
right.
And
which we still don't know.
Yeah,
which we still don't know.
But back real quick to the end of him and Zarkov talking, I loved the two threats that were made. That if you kill me, I have a friend that will not be as kind as I would be. And then I like that, I think he says, if you fuck me, I will end your entire bloodline.
Right.
I like everything about that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fantastic. And to say that an American wiped the Zarkov, the Bratville leader, mob boss's bloodline from history.
Yeah.
That will be shame for your family, like shame for your name for eternity. Yeah. I love everything about that deal. Yep. Really like the deal.
That whole end dialogue after the demise of Oliver is solid.
And it's set up, I think we as the readers are set to accept that when Ivan really wants to distance himself from his own son. I think we realize, while this is a bad guy, he's bad hombre, we realize he's not the bad in the sense of he must be eliminated right away.
Yeah.
He's bad in the sense of might be useful for a little while with his power and his connections. And he's bad in almost a noble way, like a traditional way of they at least have rules. He's going to at least play by the rules, the bad guy rules, and we can work with that. The CIA wants that, right? The CIA doesn't want loose cannons who will turn on you. They want the traditionalists who still play within certain boundaries. They'll fuck you, but the boundaries they'll play by.
Yeah, you really walk away thinking that Ivan is not as bad as Alexander.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. Right. And definitely not as crazy. I think that's the key difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like the deal. And he has a line, you know, Reece basically makes up his mind. He's going to go back, work with the CIA and Vic. Told him you'll get the 4 years out of me. And now he's got a line. And an open line of communication with someone like that can have a lot of benefits later down the road, even ones you can't expect right now.
For sure. Yep. It's all opening these doors to potential in the future. So
he essentially turned them. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Zarkov thinks he has Reece, but I think
Reece, right?
Reece has Zarkov in the end. Is what's going to happen.
Exactly.
Woo, good book, man.
Good stuff right there.
Do we do the scorecard?
I think we've got to give our final scores on the scorecard. Tyler, I sent it to you in advance. Do you have your 50 points ready to break down with us? You know what you're going to do?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, walk us through your action and plot. Those are the heaviest on the scorecard. 10 points each up for grabs, action and plot. What say you?
They're 10 apiece. I mean, this is my favorite fiction novel ever.
10
so
10.
Ooh, coming out strong. All right.
Ever. Like okay.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't term limits.
I'm in the middle of term limits.
Okay, good.
But I am not as well read in the fiction side of things as you guys. I read a lot of nonfiction and a lot of other military books as well. But this is like Jack Carr is my favorite author for fiction stuff. This is my favorite series, and this is my favorite book in that series. So there's not really a whole lot. I mean, the only category that I can maybe dock at all is bad guys because of the mole.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
So,
Mike, what did you have for action and plot, Mike?
I'm going to agree with Ty on the action there. When the action is happening, there is nothing better than it. When it's happening, I say, because I went down to an 8 on plot, because while the pacing's pretty good and the action is thrown in at the right times, I bought into the plot more in the first 2/3 of the Katie, the Hastings, the ranch. Then Katie drops off the face of the earth, which I understand why that needs to happen. And then the plot becomes more heavy on this Reginald Pine guy. And once that shift happens, the plot's a little less intriguing. So thankfully, the action carries through till the very end, 10 out of 10. But because of the plot and the intricacies of how it's woven together, the last half of the book maybe suffered a bit. So 8 on plot, 10 on action.
All right, I'm kind of along my lines with you, Mike, but I didn't dock it as much. I docked plot as a 9, so I got 19 points out of plot and action. That's still pretty good, But
did this keep you guys bought in the whole way? A perfect 5 means you're bought in the sense of the storytelling is gripping you the whole time, but also buy in the realism. Did this feel real to you?
Oh, totally. This, like I said,
5 out of 5.
we all of us have said it. This book feels, because I think the intangibles that Jack puts in, or not intangible, but the tangibles that he puts in terms of lacing the details, just allow you to believe that this could truly be a real story.
Right.
So I was bought in. 5 out of 5.
Ty?
Yep, I'm with Chris. Same reasons. I hear a lot of like complaints about his books from people who say stuff like, we don't care what the serial number is on the gun, but like as a gun guru and stuff, he doesn't go into that much detail, but it does.
No, we've read worse.
Yeah,
like not worse, but like just I know more. I guess.
Yeah, and like everybody complains about how much detail he goes into for the gear, but like as a gear guy myself, I really appreciate like that kind of detail, and it's not too much like to where he describes what color it is. Like, it matters what
I know nothing.
The guy is carrying.
Nothing about the equipment.
Well, what's cool is like there's enough there where if you cared, you could find out exactly what you're imagining.
And if you don't care, it's fine. It doesn't limit your buy-in. It doesn't put you out of the story. If you don't care, you just kind of read it and you're like, okay, cool. I have a neat visual now. Move on. So you're at a 10. You understand it. I'm at a 0. Yet we can equally enjoy those parts of the books.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this might be the last one in the series where he had to put it through DOD approval. So in the epilogue there was a whole paragraph redacted.
Right.
Yeah.
There was one chapter where there was like, as I'm listening to it, every other word that Ray was saying, I think it was chapter like 59, Ray was just saying redacted. When they were talking about like the different mode of actions that they could go through with Vic Rodriguez, it was just redacted.
And the
like,
training. when they did the mock-up
and
scenes.
the training. Yeah.
See, I like that. I know some people say it takes them out of the story and they're bothered by it. I love it. I think it adds to the mystery. And perhaps my favorite part about it is when Jack puts a little nod to his frustrations with that in the author's note, and he says, if you're really paying attention, you can read between the lines. And I think if you read these books and you're not paying attention to try to read between the lines, they're good. If you are paying attention, they're great. They go beyond good. They go to great. And the redactions, I think they're fun. I think they mean it's real. I think it shows the bullshit he went through. And as a reader, it gives me some sense of intrigue. I like it.
Agreed.
Bad guys, good guys. Tyler, why don't you break down both bad guys and good guys?
Good guy. Well, okay. Bad guys first. I think the cast is fantastic, except for the mole. I think he is the weakest link of the entire novel. So what's the point max for both of these?
These are all 5. Yeah, everything here on out.
So 5.
You may do halves. I'm
going to give bad guys a 4 because it just sucks. Like the rest of the cast of the bad guys is great. Oliver Gray, they're just people that you love to dislike and you want to see meet their demises as they do. The good guys, there's such a big cast of good guys that they get 5 because everyone's so well fleshed out. They feel real. They feel like each of them could maybe have like their own novel at some point. Like,
right.
You know, they just feel like they're very well thought out, very detailed. And so good guys get a 5.
Yeah, I think we have some consensus here because I also gave it a 4 and a 5. Pretty much for the same reasons. There was some, while I think Gray and Alexander were, guys that were super despicable, maybe you just argue that there was, and then I guess if you throw in Yvonne, like there was just a lot of them. And then there's also like the mercenaries. And then definitely I forget his name, but the mole guy, Reginald Pine, and like how he's being worked as a mole, like that was just, that's the big thing that we're gonna dig in here. But the good guys, like you bring back in, you brought back in Katie, you brought back in his, Liz Riley. You have all the Hastings, you have all of the special ops guys that help Reece out, the dogs, the good guys. They win this novel.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. I'll agree with you all. I was going to go a little lower on bad guys. Didn't go down to that 3 because the others deserve it. Alexander and his backstory just being crazy, his dynamics with his father. Oliver Gray, gotta love to hate, like you said. So I didn't bang him too much on the very few bad guys who are poorly written. So I went with the 4. Although I disagree on good guys. It's not just a 5. It's a 5 plus. You're
giving it more than a 5.
This is a fantastic cast of characters. Everyone you mentioned. And you could even one-up that. It just keeps going. Vic Rodriguez and the DCI, the Director of Central Intelligence, that lady in the meeting. Just everyone on the good side is awesome. And they're not just purely awesome. They're complex and they're individuals. So it's not just the same one story for all the good guys. It's a complex network of relationships. And it's all grounded in history and reverence and respect for one another. Everyone plays their role perfectly. Love the good guys.
Yeah, real quick. Oliver Gray reminds me of like Grima Wormtongue from Lord of the Rings. That level of bad guy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is the Stu Garrett archetype as well.
Slime ball. Yep. You just want to see get murked.
100%. Speaking of Lord of the Rings, which has some really great settings in New Zealand and all these sweeping shots, what do you say for the setting here? It's got to be that perfect 5, no?
Yeah.
It's got to be.
Yeah, 100%. Between Siberia and Montana, it's a 5. And then you throw in Medney, which for some reason, like the more times I read or listen to this, I don't know why that island is like mysterious.
You want to go visit it?
I mean, kind of. I just looked at pictures of it. I don't know how much flights are, but it just seems cool. It seems like cool. It seems like I like it more than now that it's not fiction. It just seems like a place where people could get away with exactly what we're reading about.
Yeah.
You guys both might like Connor Sullivan. His debut novel was Sleeping Bear. And it must have drawn some inspiration here from Savage Son, because very similar. It's about hunting humans. Takes place in Alaska and across this northeastern part of Siberia. So I really think you like that one. It's very similar to this.
What was the title?
Sleeping Bear by Connor Sullivan. He's got his second book coming out soon. So,
but it's not related, right?
Not related at all. But you can definitely, the way we've been talking, you can sense there's some inspiration here. It takes place in Alaska. It's a hunt-centric novel.
How about setting for you guys?
5. It's a 5. Like, just, I think the time we spend both in Montana and then in some area, he executes it really well. So it's got.
I don't know which one I like more, Montana or Mendie Island.
That's tough.
It's tough. They're fantastic. Yeah, 5+ again. Plus. All right. Should we do the covers first, or should we give our free space? Which, Tyler, if you don't know, you get a free 5 points for whatever the winner was, whatever your favorite part of the book was. Kind of like this last minute shout out. So you want to do that first, or you want to do covers?
Free space first, then covers.
Free space. Yep.
All right. So my 5 points is going to the Reece versus Sergey fight. Just by itself is some of the best action I have read in a book. Just the way it's described is super well done and easy to understand, and it feels like you're reading faster and faster because you're imagining how quickly this combat is happening. And I like everything from the beginning to where Sergey throws the rifle like a bat to get rid of it. The dogs are gone. Reece is working on his snowshoe, and Sergey slows down so he can get his shoe done. And I just like the description. It's just a solid section. I think it's the most solid chapter in the whole book.
Can I ask you a question there? Because I had to reread it. When he tosses that gun, am I right that he would have shot Reece? It just misfired or jammed?
I think it was. I think
did he toss it?
I think
it
was
an even fight.
No, he went to pull the trigger and he said
was empty.
It was the loudest noise in the entire day, and it was a click instead of a bang.
Right.
And so he grabbed the rifle by the barrel and swung it like a baseball bat, and it went off into the distance.
Right. Okay. The reason why I had to reread it, I was thinking it would be kind of cool if he was always the lackey for Alexander who got to go on these hunts.
Yeah.
But Sergey secretly wanted to prove himself.
For sure.
And this was the chance to have a fair fight with a man.
Yeah.
Just this grizzly bear of a human.
Yep.
And so I was wondering if he threw away the gun under his own volition just to say, let's have it mano-y-mano. But yeah, that's right. Okay.
Oh, interesting. I read it as you thought, Mike. I read it as if he wanted a fair fight.
Maybe
it makes more sense.
Maybe
it's
I'm wrong.
No. Now that I'm thinking about it,
no, you're right.
It
That
more
line.
Sense.
Yeah, he ran
out
I think of ammo.
Maybe it also just this crappy Russian equipment. Of course it's going to misfire. And
yeah, it
did he do it on purpose? Maybe he knew he wanted to fuck up Reece in the head and say, "Bang, you're dead. Now let's fight."
I believe what it says is the loudest noise in the entire forest was the sound of a firing pin going forward on an empty chamber.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Could still be on purpose though. There could be some mind games going on there
for sure.
Free commercial.
That was a really cool. That was a cool.
It was cool. Either way, it was cool.
What about free space for you guys,
Chris?
Mine's got to be the epilogue, man. It's freaking awesome. Like I said, I wanted more of it. I wanted just an entire book of him going through the wilderness and leaving these gifts for people, being the specter in the night. Yeah, it's the epilogue for me.
Good stuff. I'm going to shout out my girl one more time, Caroline Hastings.
Yeah, you're
over and over. Yeah,
this Caroline.
Mike's
Hastings
in love.
Yeah, you are in love, Mike.
And forgive me one more time, but let me wax poetic for my love here with one more quote, if you will. It's just, again, such a good one. Chris, I'm the quote guy on the podcast. I never have this many. The writing is that good. And I couldn't cut him down either. Usually I try to get him to 2-3 lines maximum. I had paragraphs here. It was that good. I don't want to cut any of this. So it's right when they're about to take up their positions and defend the house. And Katie's thinking, quote, Katie stared wide-eyed at the woman who just a day ago had seemed like a Western version of Martha Stewart.
Yeah, that was a good line. That was a good line.
She had transformed into a warrior. No one is coming. It's up to us. Take your positions. Caroline opened the bolt on her BRNO rifle and pulled it back far enough to confirm that there was a round in the chamber. The magazine held 5 rounds of the venerable, gotta help me out here, .375 H&H.
Yeah.
No idea what that means.
That's exactly how you say that.
Hey, I knew that. Another was in the chamber, ready to go.
Boy Scout.
Listen to this. This is Boy Scout right here. 10 more rode in a leather belt around her waist, and she stuffed another 10 in her pockets. The rifle had served her well since she first picked it up in 1971. She is strapped up, ready to go in a moment's notice when she was practically Martha Stewart just an hour ago.
Yeah, I mean, that just goes to show you how well American life has been for her, but how much she remembers from South Africa.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And that's why I can't get rid of True Believer in my mind. What that first half of the book did to establish this universe that would later be the Hastings clan means so much to me, because we got to do the covers, and then I'm hoping we can end here, boys, with a little chat of our rankings, 1 through 5 of the books, knowing full well, Chris, the Devil's Hand is not yet on the card for you, but I want to, while we have Tyler, I want to get the top 5, knowing this is in the first spot. But before we get there, let's round out the scorecard with some covers. And Tyler, a little backstory. Chris and I, we've been a little down on the Jack Carr covers. It's not our favorite in the thriller verse, but I got to say these ones are good. These ones are I think, better than the last two. So, yeah. Tyler, what do you think about these covers?
I don't mind the stock hardback covers. I like the material they're made out of. I like how they're a little reflective. I like how each one is a solid color and then black. But for me, actually, out of the ones that I'm looking at, B, which is the paperback one, is the best one.
Yes,
in my opinion.
Yeah, I've really liked all of the ones that have had this like paneling. I'm guessing that is all the same reissue as a paperback.
Yep.
And the Savage Son one, it reminds me of the epilogue. Like him, like some guy wandering through Siberia, or it could be anybody. One of the trackers, someone who is being hunted. All the Standing Men guys, they're not bad. They're not as egregious as some of the other ones that I think, like, I agree with you, Mike, that these tend to be better. I like how you have the mountains in a lot of them, whether it's Siberia, could also be Montana. These covers aren't bad. Beside F, I don't know what the hell's going on in F. Like, is that James Reece?
It looks like a vampire.
Yeah, it looks
What's
like
that? Twilight? It looks like Twilight.
It
Yeah,
does.
Twilight with a machine gun.
The thing I like the most about B is it reminds me of a very good David Morrell First Blood cover, where it's like all tan, and then out of nowhere is John Rambo, and this one reminds me a lot of that. And I definitely think that's Siberia or Medney behind him.
Right.
Yep.
But yeah, I just like the color and how it works, and I like how the snow is out of the stripes and in the stripes.
Right.
Right.
The black and gold works.
I was just looking
Definitely.
at the other softback releases too. Like the first one for Terminal List is the stripes with the Capitol building. And the second one for True Believer is like the stripes are vertical and it has the American flag with like an explosion at the bottom. I think that one's kind of weak. I think this is out of the paperbacks is the best.
Yeah, I think overall we like the paperbacks more. You're right. The paneling and striping have been our favorite in the series, but this I think is the best one. Oh, and another thing, Tyler, we like to judge a cover by the book. So a big criteria for us is, does it relate to the story? And I kid you not, sometimes they miss the main part of the story on a cover and just give you some generic crap.
Yeah.
And I just love that every one of these is in the winter. Every one of them is in the forest or Siberia. A might even be Montana. I'm not sure, but
okay. So real quick, look at E.
Yeah,
that's Montana.
Oh, yeah, and Montana. I was thinking that could also be Thorne's cabin on the Idaho border.
Could be
with Dimitri.
Yeah,
imagine if he just tortured Dimitri right back there.
There's none that I hate other than F. So the rest of those are pretty solid.
Yeah. All right, so that's I'm going a solid 4.5. I don't know what you guys.
Whoa, that's pretty high. Okay,
probably do like a 4 for B.
All right,
I think I'm gonna go down a 3.5. While I like these more than the other ones in the series, they're not that great for me. Oh, and C. Chris, we got a running man. C is just too Flynnian for me. Like, that's a Vince Flynn stock image right there with the running man. I'm just surprised there's no power lines, and that will be for our OG listeners, but there should be power lines in that picture. That looks like an early Vince right there. And I'm sorry, one last thing I'm dinging it on. So I got to go down to 3.5. Faces. Tyler, I got a face problem.
You got a face problem. You don't like
I got over the putting a guy on the cover, which I'm not a big fan of, having an actual body or a person. Too many faces. Once you add the face, I don't want it on a Thriller cover. So unfortunately, A, which is really cool artistically and design wise, you see half a face. F, you see a face. B, D, you got a little too much of a face. So yeah, sorry guys, going 3.5 on these covers.
Real quick, if either of you guys have Google open, just Google First Blood novel cover. It's the second picture. Is probably my favorite novel cover. It should be first is in black lettering with like the tan background, and then blood is in red. And so at the top it has John Rambo in a flannel with a rifle.
That's fantastic!
Cool. That cool cover is so.
That's
good.
a great cover.
I like how the R like sort of dips down into the blood.
Yes.
That's cool.
Dude, you're 100%. That's a great cover. It's simple. It's very simple.
Yeah, I like how small John Rambo is on it. Like he doesn't take the spotlight away from the title. Yep. And I like
that one. I won't say has a face problem either. It's small enough and it's like clip arty enough. Yeah, no face problem there. That's a great one.
So
nice. All right. So what does that bring our totals to? Tyler with a very strong 48 points out of 50. Chris right behind with a 47.5. I am usually the critic, a bit lower at 45.5.
He didn't make it for the critics.
Have you ever given anything perfect scores?
He just did.
Okay.
On a pod without me.
I did it without Chris because I read a book that was so good. I had to jump on the microphone and do it. Sons of Valor. Dude, Andrews and Wilson, Brian Andrews and Jeff Wilson are a tag team duo. Their Sons of Valor series, there's only 2 of them.
Okay.
They're almost the perfect 2 books.
I'll have to add them to the library then.
Dude. Yeah, so I jumped on the mic and I was thinking out loud, I'm like, I'm not going to force this to be a 50 out of 50, but there's a good chance if I think out loud right now, I'm going to get myself to the conclusion of 50 out of 50, and it happened. They're that good.
Cool.
Yeah.
So if we go off all of my numbers, Mike, then this is the highest rated book, which I would agree with. I think like this is there. I rank Terminal List a point above True Believer, and then In the Blood was my lowest. Which it's funny. Like I remember enjoying that book, but I don't know why I was so down on it on the scorecard.
But these ones are so good, right?
But I think, the first 3 are definitely the better of the novels. I think I agree, but I would flip Terminal List and True Believer. I think it would go Savage Son, True Believer, Terminal List, and then In the Blood. And I can't rank Devil's Hand yet because I haven't read it yet.
So Terminal List is dropping to the 3 spot for you. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the first half of True Believer.
Okay.
So that's my order. I'm sticking to it.
Okay.
For me, it's Savage Son, Terminal List, then In the Blood, then True Believer, then Devil's Hand.
Okay. By scorecard, I would have Terminal List in first place, Savage Son, and then True Believer, In the Blood, and Devil's Hand. I think I'm gonna bump True Believer to the second spot, just nostalgia's sake. I'm an originalist. I like debuts and their follow up. Like if you give me that 1-2 punch, that means a lot to me. And so I'm going in order. Terminal List, True Believer, Savage Son is my top 3.
I get it.
Terminal List. I just remember opening it for the first time and just being blown away.
Yep,
nothing's going to unseat it.
That's how I was too. And in my opinion, Devil's Hand, even though it might be at the bottom of my list, it's still good. Like I've read it once, listened to it twice. There's still really good parts of it. It's just,
it's good.
It's just, I could see how Mike is annoyed by the topic, but maybe try and give it another read because post that lifestyle, it's better. I don't know. It's different.
I think that is my bias.
We'll read it, and we'll have you back on, Tyler. This was great.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks.
I'm going to be more open, and I'm going to read it with an open mind, and I'm going to come at it fresh and give it an honest score on the scorecard. So
sounds good.
I will drop my biases from my previous read.
Sounds good.
I will also say Savage Son, though it slipped to my third spot, I will recognize it is perhaps his best written book. I actually think it might be the best written book. Just all the quotes I pulled out, right? Like, I think it's the best written book, and I could see why it's a fan favorite and probably the highest rated in the series. So I get that. It's just me personally. I like the originals of things. So, well, Tyler, thanks so much. It's like always a blast having you on. We'll bring you back real soon. And is there a date for Only the Dead? Do we know when we're going to be getting that? Because we'll have to chat, in the lead up to that.
It just says spring 2023.
Spring, okay.
His books normally come out in like April-ish, right? So,
yeah, the last one was slotted for April, got pushed to June.
I see a pub date for May 16th.
Okay. There we go.
Potential.
I think they try to beat the summer rush. Like Brad Thor's a summer novel. Kyle Mills is post-summer. I think they try to open up with Jack usually a little earlier. So cool. Good stuff, boys. A lot of fun.
All right, well, thank you, Tyler, for coming on the pod. This was great. We had an hour and 47-minute marathon of Savage Son, but that was great. That was awesome.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
We have to thank our patrons. Big shout out to our special operators, Jerry F., our special agents, Daryl, Kevin, George, Matt, Dawn, Dennis, Peggy, Catherine, Ray, Bridget, Jeff, and Mark. And we'll be back in January covering more Thriller podcasts. So look forward to us in the new year.
Please subscribe, rate, and review using the Apple Podcast app. You can find us online at thrillerpod.com or using the Twitter and Instagram handle at thrillerpodcast. And as always, like Jonathan Hastings says, to the lads.
To the lads.